This video is going to be the first in a two-part series where I learn how to make a strawberry accord, and I'm going to take you guys on the journey with me. So in this video I'm going to start off by firstly looking up how to make a strawberry accord, or working out which ingredients might go in it, and then I'm also going to do a couple of trial blends. Hopefully in the next episode I'm going to finish off with some more trial blends, testing out more ingredients to add and finalize the accord. Let's get into it then. So the first book which I always reach for when I'm looking to make a new accord, but especially a fruit accord, is Perfume, The Alchemy of Scent by Jean-Claude Alain. Now this is a book you've probably heard me go on and on about a lot on this channel, but the only reason is because I think it's a really good book. Now specifically in terms of making accords, he has a table of various aromachemicals you can use to actually go and make fruit accords. And this table gives you the combinations you need to make apple, peach, pear, strawberry, wild strawberry, and raspberry. So knowing that, I firstly went here to look what we can use in a strawberry accord. Now, Jean-Claude Alain says for a strawberry accord, a basic strawberry accord, you can use Fructone, which I've got here, and Ethyl maltol, which I have got here. He then goes on to say, if you want to now make wild strawberry, you still take the Fructone and the ethyl maltol, but this time you also add a third thing, which is methyl anthranolate. So I've got that here. I dipped these three aromachemicals on the scent strips at 1% just before starting record on this video. The reason I haven't just dipped them in front of you is because these are mid-notes, and actually at the very beginning the ethanol really takes over the smell, so it's much better to wait for that to evaporate off before evaluating. So ethyl maltol and Fructone I've both covered already in my pineapple accord video. Ethyl maltol and Fructone are really commonly used in fruit accords, so these two pop up again and again. But just in case you didn't see that, ethyl maltol has this kind of sweet caramel, not really caramel, but kind of caramelized sugar kind of odor. And then Fructone has this very kind of, again, it's very sugary, but this is more of a sharp, a bit fizzy, a bit fresh, quite a in-your-face sugary scent. And then methyl anthranolate, which is something I have not covered before. And actually, this is something that I've never really used properly in a perfume before, so I think it's quite interesting. This smells a little bit phenolic, so a bit like kind of a medical smell, you know, like a medical cleaning smell. But it also smells a bit like orange blossom and neroli and that kind of thing, so a little bit floral. So it's something that on its own I wouldn't think, wow, this smells great. But after doing the blends, I actually found it was a lot more interesting than I initially thought. So we'll get back to that later. Anyway, before continuing to actually go and make the blends, I wanted to look at more sources and get more ideas of what could go in a strawberry accord. Another book that I reached for is Scent and Chemistry, which unfortunately is very difficult to find at the moment, but it is a great book nonetheless. It is very heavy on the chemistry side, so to be honest, for most people, I don't think it's really a book you need to consider buying. However, it's interesting for me to have this book and to be able to tell you guys something that I find in it. If you are very into chemistry, then I think it is a good book, but it's extremely dense. It's the kind of thing that you're not really ever going to read. You know, you're just going to dip in and out of it every now and again to find something or other that's interesting. So inside this book, it does mention that another thing found in strawberries is Furanial. Furanial is also called strawberry furanone. And it's something that if you look online, for example, Pell Wall on the website or in base notes in the forums, people say this can be used in strawberries. Now, unfortunately, I don't actually have this, so I can't try it in my blends, but maybe in the future that would be something that would be cool to try. Next, I went and looked at some articles. I found a really good article published by the Royal Society of Chemistry, which goes over in actually a very nice and easy to read way different volatile constituents and things that contribute to the taste and the smell of strawberries. So I'm just going to give you a summary of this article, but I'm also going to leave a link in the description so you can go and read it for yourself. Apparently, strawberries contain furanial, which is what we just talked about, cis-3-hexanol. Again, this is something in the pineapple accord and something that I like to try out in all fruit accords. It's this green cut grass smell, but it generally gives things a kind of green, fresh, natural edge and that's something you normally want with fruits. This is something that I have got, but I'm not going to look at it in this video. I'm going to leave that till part 2. It also talks about some esters, and 2 of the main ones are ethyl butyrate and ethyl to methyl butyrate. Again, these are 2 things I have, but I'm not going to look at them in this video. I'm going to look at them in part 2, next video. These fruity esters are top notes, but they do smell quite characteristically of the sweet, fruity strawberry kind of smells that you can get, quite jammy, quite very strawberry. Another thing that it mentioned was Gamma-undacalactone, or more commonly known as aldehyde C14. This actually smells of peaches. So again, this is something I'm going to look at in the next video and see if it can contribute or not to the strawberry accord. This article also goes on to say some of the differences between wild strawberries and regular strawberries. So it says wild strawberries contain more different kind of volatile aroma chemicals, generally a wider range. Apparently it contains alpha-pinene, beta-myrcene, alpha-terpineol, beta-phalangine, myrtenol acetate, and myrtenol. These are things that I don't have, and generally these kind of smells are quite pine tree-like or kind of camphoraceous, medicinal, herbal. These things I would probably try if I had them, but I don't, so we're not going to go over those in this video. However, the other thing it does mention, again, in wild strawberries, interestingly, is methyl anthranolate, which is exactly what Jean-Claude Elena says. So again, it's another good reason to go and try the methyl anthranolate. And finally, there was another article, which is a very scientific kind of just look at trying to measure the volatile chemicals that are kind of given off by the strawberry. And again, this one does mention the cis-3-hexanol, which we've talked about, the ethyl butyrate, and the ethyl methyl 2 butyrate. So again, these are things we're going to look at in part 2. Interestingly, nowhere at all actually mentions having strawberry aldehyde or aldehyde C16, which is not actually an aldehyde, confusingly. But there is this one kind of perfumery aroma chemical called aldehyde C16, which is commonly associated with strawberries because when you smell it, it does smell something like a strawberry. It's also called strawberry glycidate as another name. Nowhere actually mentions this being in the smell of strawberries, and I think the fact that in the example that Jean-Claude Elena gave, it doesn't have aldehyde C16, even though it's something that's commonly used in strawberry flavorings, goes to say that he thinks, well, actually, it's not good in a realistic or a accurate interpretation of strawberry. That said, again, it might be something that's worth trying out to at least just see what the effect is like and seeing if I think maybe it does work, maybe it doesn't. So again, in the next video, I'm going to try to cover that. Let's go on then to the trial blends I made. So the first blend I did was just the very basic, what Jean-Claude Elena suggests, which was just use ethyl maltol and fructone together. When I made the pineapple accord, I had actually both fructone and ethyl maltol already in the blend. I never had it at a point where I smelled just those 2 together without the other things, so like the allyl hexanoate, which made it smell of pineapple, so I never kind of got any impression of a strawberry at the time. But I thought that this ratio that I used would be a good place to start. So what I did for the first accord was I did fructone at 10%, 0.1 grams, and then I did ethyl maltol at 10%, 0.05 grams, and mixed these together. Sure enough, I made this. And I've got to say, I'm really surprised how much this actually smells like strawberry. Obviously, it's not perfect, it's not super realistic, but it's a good way there. It definitely, I think it really does smell like strawberry. And I just think it's pretty cool that that actually works, given that it's just 2 things. And these 2 things are really quite broad. I mean, you can use them all over the place in fruit accords. Obviously, I don't think at this stage it's really got enough strawberry character for it to be kind of definitive, yes, that's strawberry. But if you think about it like a strawberry, it definitely smells like a strawberry, if that kind of makes sense. So I think it's a really good start. And I'm quite impressed with how, to be honest, how such a simple blend worked so well. Okay, so next I did another blend, which was when I added the methyl anthranolate. So this was what was meant to make it smell more like a wild strawberry instead of just a regular strawberry. Just before I talk about the blend, I just want to talk about a couple of points regarding methyl anthranolate. So I was saying, yes, methyl anthranolate smells a bit like orange blossom. It also has that phenolic smell. It's actually a characteristic odor compound that's in the smell of grapes apparently as well, which I find quite interesting because I don't think on its own it really smells like grapes. It's also actually been found in wild strawberries, so they have kind of like discovered, yes, it's there, and lots of other things as well. The important thing though about methyl anthranolate is it's actually an amine, which in chemistry is a functional group or a certain group of atoms which are stuck onto the molecule. So because methyl anthranolate has this amine group, it can actually react with aldehydes to form something called a Schiff base. This is pretty important because there's a good chance that you might actually have some aldehydes in your perfume. For example, if you're using things like aldehyde C9, aldehyde C10, or if you've got other things with an aldehyde group which aren't named like an aldehyde, for example, hydroxycitronellyl. This is a very common one, which when mixed with methyl anthranolate, they react together and form a different thing called aurantinol, which is actually another fragrance compound. The important thing though is that each of these smell different. So if you have a perfume and you put your hydroxycitronellyl and your methyl anthranolate together, over time, and it could take a long time depending on the concentrations of these things and other factors, it could be something like a year, but these will react together and form aurantinol, which smells different. So you could have a situation where you made a perfume that smells great, but after a year, it suddenly starts to smell horrible because of the byproducts that are formed. So it's really important basically just to kind of notice, especially with methyl anthranolate that you use it, that there's a risk of something like this happening. So it's just another thing to consider. At the moment, we don't have any more aldehydes in our simple accord. It's just to say that it's possible, it could happen, so it's definitely something to think about. Anyway, so I made the second accord, and this time what I did was I kept the fructone and the ethyl maltol the same as before. This time I added some methyl anthranolate. Now because even at 1% I found this pretty strong, I decided to only use it at 1% in my blend. So I used 0.05 grams at 1%, so that's quite a lot less than the other things in the mixture. That's 10 times less than the ethyl maltol or 20 times less than the fructone. Anyway, I was really surprised about the massive effect that this actually had on the blend. So what I found was it does still smell like strawberry to some degree, maybe a little bit less like strawberry actually, I'm not super sure. Or maybe a bit less natural, a bit less realistic, but still kind of like a strawberry, right? But I found it really made it smell a lot more silky, creamy, velvety. A bit more like kind of the strawberry you would find in chocolate, kind of less like the actual physical strawberry that you would find that's all kind of fresh and juicy. It kind of made it smell a bit more like something that I would actually expect to find in a perfume. You know, sometimes perfumes have these kind of scents that just make them kind of feel like perfumes as opposed to smells. Kind of like in this case, it reminded me a bit of almost a musky kind of scent, just slightly, a bit kind of soft. It kind of had that kind of effect as a modifier to the strawberry. So it felt a bit more like this kind of silky, luxurious, soft version of the strawberry that was made before. So either way, I found it quite interesting. I still felt the methyl anthranolate was a little bit too strong. So I think for the next trial blend, I'm probably going to turn it down a bit and then keep adding other things to see how that affects the blend. But either way, I haven't done the next blend yet. Hopefully next week I'll be able to make some more blends, so I'll start adding the extra things we talked about. So the ethyl butyrate, for example, the cis-3-hexanol, the Gamma-undacalactone, or that peach smelling thing, and we'll see kind of how these affect the blend, see what they smell like. So in the meantime, I hope you guys are doing some nice blends of your own. Let me know in the comments if you found any interesting combinations or anything that smells nice. And yeah, man, have a great week. Hopefully it goes well, and see you next time.